Well, my friends, good morning and welcome to Wednesday, September the 22nd's Cup of Faith. I guess we're officially into fall. Not sure how you like that or not, but in 6 months we'll be looking towards spring. So we have good news coming. Matter of fact, fall is probably my favorite time of the year. I love putting on sweaters again and having the warm days that we occasionally get. We have much to be thankful for. Big shout out to Bethany DeWalt for filling in for me last week. I really appreciate that. A week ago today, I was in Chilliwack. I have a sister that was just packing up and getting ready to move to Alberta, and some of our mutual friends threw a surprise party for her, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm very grateful to be there. Brenda and I had been on vacation for a week, and we had the great joy and privilege of staying with some friends who, frankly, live in the most beautiful house I've ever been in. And it's an executive home, and we're both grateful that they're our friends, and we're grateful for what God has done and added to their lives, but it hasn't changed them as people. They are amazing, gracious people. Part of the vacation as well was they lent us one of their vehicles, which happened to be a brand new BMW that we got to drive around the lower mainland for a week, which was a huge thing, not just because of the vehicle, but rentals on the West Coast are at a premium, and I've heard that they're kind of going for about $500 a day. So it was a great saving to us. So I began to reflect on this a bit as we came home. All the people we saw, lots of people from Moose Jaw, including Jonathan and Kayla Gilbertson, got to be in their home and just bring some Moose Jaw love to them. And we had a great time. But as I came home, I was thinking a bit about how we compare ourselves to each other. And first thing I want to say is that we who live in this great country of ours, regardless of whether or not the election went your way or not, we live in a country where we are the 1% globally. We have much compared to many people. And on one hand, we should be grateful for what we have. But on another hand, I know it doesn't change things for those who are oppressed and who are in great poverty. And I think we have a responsibility about that, not just to be grateful for what we have. I also have a little conclusion that no matter how much we have, how big our homes are, our vehicles, the clothes we wear, the restaurants we eat in, our bank accounts, there will always be others who have more than us. And it is a great danger and disservice to God to compare ourselves to others that have more. But rather, I think in a general sense, we should rejoice for what they have and rejoice for what we have. It does not mean that we do not have prosperity. And a couple of days ago, I was reading from in my one-year Bible, and I'm just wrapped up in the book of Nehemiah, and Nehemiah building the wall around Jerusalem and his leadership skills and all of the challenges he encountered. But in the middle of that, there is Nehemiah chapter 9, which is this great and profound prayer that, if you will allow me for the next few weeks, we're going to call this the prosperity of God. We all have this prosperity. And today I'm going to give you just 3. So allow me to dig right in. Again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for those that are already saying good morning. I will either respond right after Cup of Faith or at the end of the day, and you'll get a belated good morning, but I really appreciate that you watch. So without further ado, the 3 prosperities that I have for you today that are for all of us. One more cautionary tale here. Even when we have much, it does not necessarily mean that we are protected from sickness or calamity or family strife or personal challenges. It's just those things often stand apart from prosperity. So don't fall into the trap of saying, well, prosperity is only about material wealth, because it's not. So the first prosperity I have is from Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 6. This is where the prayer starts for me. the prosperity of God's creation. And it says that you alone are the Lord. And you made the skies and the heavens and all the stars, and you made the earth and the seas and everything in them. So we have the prosperity of this glorious creation. If you look out a window today and you see the leaves are turning color and yet it is warm, and we have a sustainable planet that we can live on. We breathe here. Food is grown here. This is all God's creation. A friend of mine sent me a picture a couple of days ago of these glorious northern lights over Kitepwa Lake, because they know it is close to my heart because of my involvement with the camp there. Every one of us today has the prosperity of God's creation. Our second of three prosperities today is the prosperity of covenant, or the prosperity of God's promises. And in verse 7, where it's the prayer talks about Abraham's covenant with God and God's covenant with Abraham, and the mutual faithfulness towards each other and the promises that meant. And that verse concludes with, "You have done what you promised, for you are always true to your word." And there are times when the promises seem very far away, and we wonder if God has forgotten or if God will ever fulfill his promises. And that is not the case. I often say, God doesn't necessarily act quickly, but he does act suddenly. Jehoiakim, if you recall, a couple of weeks ago, was in prison for 37 years. And then suddenly he's released from prison. Suddenly he is given new clothes. Suddenly he gets to eat at the king's table. Suddenly he is spoken kindly to. This is for so many of us, our story. It's been a long, long journey. And then God will act suddenly, because God keeps his promises, and the scriptures are full of them. And often where we fall into problems is not because God is not fulfilling his promises. We're just not even aware. And so faith is not created in us. Rather, doubt and worry is, because of the absence of awareness of God's promises. Even our awareness seems to trigger something in us, and God acts, because that's just the way God is. And here's the third prosperity for today. The prosperity of God's awareness. And it continues. The prayer continues with recounting how the Israelites had been enslaved in Egypt. And it says, "You saw the misery of our ancestors in Egypt, and you heard their cries from beside the Red Sea. And you displayed miraculous signs and wonders against Pharaoh and his officials and all his people. For you knew how arrogantly they were treating our ancestors." God saw, God heard, God knew. And it says you have a glorious reputation that has never been forgotten. And if you're going through a difficult season, be aware of this. Be aware of this fact, that God will see us in our hard times. And he hears our cries, our desperation. And he is aware of what's going on. And he acts out of his own reputation. So today we have the prosperity of God's creation. We have the prosperity of God's covenant. And we have the prosperity of God's awareness in our lives. Let me wrap this up with a verse from actually 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. One of my favorite verses of all time. "As his divine power has given us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue." Everything we need, all of our prosperity, comes in our relationship with Christ by his divine power. So friends, thank you for your time. I hope this has been encouraging. I hope this is in the middle of a week, whether it's a good week or a bad week, and whatever's going on in your life. I want you to remember that you are loved deeply, and that God's on your side, and he's got great things for us. and let's enjoy the fullness of God's character in our lives. So today, my friends, as I customarily do, cheers, enjoy your cup of faith.